Children of Almighty God, life can often be like a winding road, where we encounter people who seem to be both a blessing and a burden. Have you ever noticed how some relationships start out shining brightly, but end up mired in confusion, chaos, and suffering? Some connections promise stability, but bring storms, offer love, but actually trap you in a web of control and pain. Like a ship lured by a false lighthouse, you can be led forward, only to crash into unseen rocks. Today, we reflect on the consequences of leaving a narcissist, a journey filled with ups and downs, broken promises, and betrayals that often leave deep emotional scars and wear on the spirit. Why is it so hard to break free? Why do the cycles of idealization, rejection, and reconciliation seem endless? This challenge invites us to look beyond the confusion toward the freedom God desires for us. In His wisdom, we are reminded that God is not a God of disorder, but of peace. 1 Corinthians 14 verse 33. True peace is not found in returning to chaos, but in trusting in God's steadfast love. With open hearts, let's reflect together on these patterns of control, fear, and healing. May we seek clarity and strength to identify when we are trapped in cycles that are hurting our souls. If you feel the weight of such a relationship, know that there is hope beyond the pain. God's love is a refuge, a safe haven that stands firm when everything around us seems to be falling apart. Join me on this journey of discovery, and together we will reclaim the peace and dignity to which we are called. Have you ever noticed how certain cycles leave you feeling drained, confused, and questioning your own worth? Imagine being lifted to heights of idealization, where everything seems perfect, only to be suddenly thrown into an abyss of devaluation, where your worth is undermined by contempt and indifference. This painful pattern is no coincidence. It is designed to manipulate and control, in ways that are far more complex than they appear. C.S. Lewis once said that the devil is content to see us believe lies, as long as they keep us trapped. In abusive relationships, especially with narcissists, these chains often take the form of cycles of idealization, devaluation, discarding, and attempts to attract you back, a process known as sucking you back in. Initially, during idealization, you are placed on a pedestal. The narcissist paints a picture of perfection, offering praise and validation. However, they do not see the real you, but rather a reflection of their own need for control. Over time, the pedestal begins to wobble, and praise turns to criticism. In the devaluation phase, you may feel your sense of self slipping away, replaced by shame and insecurity. Have you ever felt this gradual decline? The erosion of your identity can leave you perplexed, wondering how someone who once seemed to adore you can now show you disdain and contempt. When you are no longer useful to feed their ego, the narcissist enters the discard phase. This abandonment is often abrupt and cold, leaving you to deal with trauma, confusion, and an overwhelming sense of emptiness. You may have noticed their mocking indifference, their callous disregard, and wondered if everything you experienced was true. But even that is not the end. Like a puppeteer trying to regain control of the strings, the narcissist may return, trying to lure you back with promises of change, renewed charm, or even guilt. This pattern is not just a relationship problem, it is a reflection of a wounded soul, dominated by pride and fear. As Proverbs 26 verse 11 says, "As a dog returns to his vomit, so a fool repeats his folly." Recognizing this cycle is the first step toward freedom. But what happens when you decide to break free from it? When you reject chaos and choose peace, the consequences can be profound. The narcissist's reactions to being left further expose the dynamics of control, validation, and power that were at play. When a narcissist is abandoned, it is like a mirror being shattered. The image they used to reassure themselves of their importance shatters. The loss of control over you is unbearable, and their reactions can be as unpredictable as a storm at sea. The first reaction is usually anger, an intense, fiery rage fueled by the loss of validation. This anger is not just frustration, it is the cry of wounded pride, desperately fighting to regain lost dominance. Have you ever felt like you were standing too close to a fire, with the heat of that anger burning your soul? But anger is not the narcissist's only weapon. Sometimes they resort to mockery, like a blade that cuts through your dignity with sarcasm and contempt. These charged words are designed to make you feel small, an attempt to regain lost control. The mockery, often unexpected, comes like a shadow, echoing in your mind doubts about your worth, your decisions, and even your identity. This strategy is designed to plant you back in the toxic cycle. Another reaction is indifference, the icy silence of someone who wants you to believe that you never amounted to anything. This coldness is a mask, an attempt to hide the deep insecurity and fear that consumes the narcissist. They may act as if your departure is insignificant, as if you were just a passing presence. This attitude is designed to punish you, to make you question your choice to leave. Behind this apparent apathy lies a strategy. Indifference is a defense against vulnerability, a shield against pain. You may have felt this cold barrier and wondered if they ever really cared. These reactions, anger, mockery, indifference, reflect a desperate struggle to maintain control. When the strings of manipulation snap, the narcissist panics, because losing control means facing the terrifying emptiness within themselves. For them, domination over others is as essential as the air they breathe. Without it, they feel suffocated. Deep down, this insatiable need for power is an illusion, an attempt to hide what they really are, deeply insecure people, afraid to face their own fragility. A throne built on insecurity and fear is hard to hold. A narcissist's attempts to reassert control often spiral into even more chaotic cycles of conflict. Do you notice how their grip tightens when they feel their freedom slipping away? This insatiable need for validation fuels their reactions, because without someone to bolster their inflated self-image, they collapse like a star turning into a black hole. For them, validation is a lifeline, a compass in a world they cannot face alone. Your departure shatters this illusion and leaves them adrift. The anger and mockery they express does not reflect your worth, but rather their fragility. Have you noticed how their accusations speak more about their own wounds and insecurities than about you? In the midst of this emotional storm, there is an insatiable hunger for power. The narcissist's identity is built on dominance, on the belief that everyone around them should revolve around them. When you walk away, this universe is thrown out of balance. Their outbursts of anger and displays of indifference are just desperate attempts to pull you back into that orbit. But true power isn't in controlling others, it's in mastering yourself. Jesus reminds us in John 8 verse 32, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Their power over you only exists as long as you allow it. Have you noticed how their control weakens when you embrace this liberating truth? These reactions, anger, mockery, indifference, also reveal the insecurity that lurks beneath their facade of strength. Beneath this veneer is a deep fear of abandonment, a dread of facing the emptiness that separation brings. This emptiness reminds them of their own inner neediness, like a child lost in the darkness. Their anger and mockery are actually cries for reassurance. But no amount of control over others can bridge that gap. Have you ever felt this, how their reactions reflect more their emptiness than anything about you? Tell us in the comments. A narcissist's anger often reflects more their fear of losing themselves to their own insecurities than of losing someone specific. This fear is rooted in attachment wounds from old traumas that leave them unable to fully trust, love unconditionally, or face their own vulnerability. Their reactions to abandonment are echoes of these deep fears, repeating old patterns of rejection and betrayal. They refuse to face these issues, and their anger and coldness act as defensive barriers to avoid dealing with internal wounds. However, the narcissist's real battle is not with the person who leaves them, but with themselves. Their reactions, while painful, reflect a deeper truth: their freedom threatens those who fear facing their own emotional prisons. By breaking free, you break the cycle, unmask the illusions, and reclaim your peace. This act of courage reveals the emptiness behind the narcissist's power and the fragility of their control. When attachment itself is distorted, the fear of separation becomes a battlefield. The human bond, which should be a delicate and reliable thread between hearts and minds, becomes fragile and frayed by childhood experiences and patterns of mistrust. For the narcissist, attachment is often shaped by disorganized or avoidant styles, the result of a survival that values control over connection. Intimacy, which should bring comfort, is seen as a threat. In the disorganized attachment style, the narcissist lives in a constant tension between the need for closeness and the fear of it. The heart craves connection while the mind screams for protection. This duality creates an emotional roller coaster where affection turns to rejection and warmth to cold detachment. This chaotic behavior leaves those around them confused and exhausted, unsure which version of the narcissist they will encounter. In the avoidant attachment style, the narcissist builds such high barriers of self-sufficiency that intimacy cannot penetrate them. They reject vulnerability, seeing it as weakness, and mask their fears with apparent indifference. Beneath this facade of strength lies a heart terrified of the risk of rejection. Thus, they choose solitude as a way to avoid pain, exchanging connection for a false sense of security. These attachment wounds, rooted in the fear of abandonment, fuel a constant need for external validation. The attention and admiration of others become scaffolding that supports the instability of their identity. When this validation is denied, their defenses crumble, resulting in emotional outbursts or withdrawal. This cycle of idealization and rejection is a reflection of their search for control, but also of their desperation to avoid internal emptiness. This pattern creates instability in relationships, where trust is replaced by conflict and manipulation. Emotional outbursts and punishing silence become weapons, transforming what should be a foundation of love and growth into a battlefield of power and fear. At the heart of this instability is the fear of vulnerability. The narcissist wears masks of indifference, perfectionism, or dominance, but these masks do not protect them; instead, they imprison them. By avoiding vulnerability, they also avoid the possibility of healing. This emotional reactivity perpetuates the cycle of chaos and conflict as old wounds invade the present. Emotional peace remains elusive, held hostage by unhealed pain. In narcissistic relationships, the pattern of separation and return is a dance of chaos. Each separation reignites deep fears, while each reconciliation brings temporary relief, only for the cycle to begin again. Fear of abandonment causes the narcissist to push others away in order to regain control, but absence forces them to bring them back. This ebb and flow dynamic keeps everyone involved trapped in an exhausting emotional spiral where old wounds continue to dictate the present. Recognizing the patterns of separation and return in a relationship marked by narcissistic behavior is the first step to breaking free. It is essential to understand that the narcissist's actions, while painful, are a reflection of their own wounds and not of your lack of worth. Breaking this cycle requires clarity and emotional strength, anchoring yourself in your own perceptions rather than in promises of change that often fail to materialize. True healing begins when you stop trying to fix what is broken in the other person and start taking care of yourself. Breaking free from this cycle requires the courage to choose peace, even if it means letting go. This choice is not easy, especially when the narcissist constantly tries to pull you back through emotional manipulation and false promises. Connecting with spiritual values can provide the strength needed to overcome the trauma. Finding stability in something greater, such as God's unwavering love, can bring the peace and insight needed to break out of this pattern. Freedom does not lie in waiting for someone else to change, but in recognizing that your own life does not have to be marked by instability. Sometimes the greatest act of love you can offer yourself is to let go of what causes you pain and embrace a future of calm and balance. Breaking free from a relationship marked by manipulation and emotional control is an act of courage and wisdom. It is understanding that your value lies not in the approval of another person, but in the truth that you are a beloved creation, destined for peace and dignity. Moving away from destructive patterns is not an act of cruelty, but of respect for the life God has given you. True love does not manipulate or deceive, it liberates. Even in the face of intense attraction, remember that choosing peace is honoring what God wants for you. Resisting the narcissist's attempts to return can be challenging, but it is an opportunity to strengthen your resolve and resilience. A relationship with a narcissist can feel like an emotional roller coaster, highs of idealization followed by sharp drops of rejection. These cycles are designed to undermine your self-confidence and keep you stuck. But God offers stability in the midst of the storm. Psalm 55 verse 22 reminds us, "Cast your burden on the Lord, and He will sustain you." It is possible to get off this emotional roller coaster. It takes courage to recognize the cycle for what it is and accept that true change begins with you. In John 14 verse 27, Jesus says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives." This peace is available to you, regardless of the chaos around you. Breaking destructive patterns is an act of faith. It is trusting that God has a greater purpose for your life, a life of stability, love, and clarity. The path ahead may be challenging, but it holds the promise of healing and renewal. God is a refuge and a fortress, and He calls you to live fully in the peace that only He can offer. If this message touched your heart and brought clarity or comfort, I invite you to connect with us. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Perhaps a simple word like "I am worthy of God's peace and love" could be a step toward your healing journey. Let's build a community of faith, courage, and restoration together. Don't forget to like this message, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear these words of encouragement. Together, we can grow stronger by grace and guided by truth. Your support makes a difference. Let's walk side by side toward the freedom and peace that God desires for each of us.